In a twist as shocking as it is heart-wrenching, the storm clouds gathering over Los Angeles's Forrester and Spencer families have coalesced around one soul, little Douglas. From the moment the whispers began, that Thomas Forrester had quietly slipped back into town after weeks of absence, every spine tingled with anticipation. After Luna's tragic departure, viewers braced for the next casualty, fingers pointed at Liam, convinced that fate would claim yet another core character. Yet the writers pulled the rug from under us, staring the narrative down an unexpected corridor of despair and tender sacrifice. Douglas, the boy whose disappearance off-screen had left Hope and Thomas hollow with worry, now stands at center stage in a battle against a relentless, life-threatening anemia. Thomas, himself fractured by guilt and longing, races against time, every heartbeat echoing the cruel tick of a clock that may yet deny his son one last moment of laughter. Thomas's re-entry into the Forrester compound was not heralded by fanfare or announcements. Instead, it was as though he willed himself back into existence purely by the force of desperation. The corridors, once so familiar, felt alien under his feet, each step laden with the weight of what he must ask, the implacable Ridge Forrester, designer, patriarch, thorn in his side, harboring in his veins the rare blood Thomas requires to coax Douglas back from death's doorstep. For weeks, Douglas had lain hidden, his condition worsened by an insidious form of anemia that drained him of strength even as his spirit fought on. Thomas had summoned every ounce of paternal resolve, obeyed every doctor's directive, braved hospital corridors lined with sterile white walls and hushed whispers. He had donated blood himself over and over until his own body teetered at the brink, yet his son's pulse refused to rally. And then, in a flicker of clarity born of panic and unwavering love, he realized Ridge's blood type, that same rare lifeline, might extend Douglas's hours, perhaps even days, in order to deliver a final, precious moment with his mother, Hope. It was a confrontation destined to crack open old wounds. Ridge, stoic and reserved, had long harbored distrust towards Thomas, whose personal missteps and reckless passions had burned bridges among the Forresters. Yet watching Thomas stand there, drawn and hollow-eyed, brandishing medical reports and pleading for the chance to save a child's life, Ridge felt something inside him shift. Memories of Douglas as a toddler, chubby-cheeked, bright-eyed, chasing his mother with awkward, toddling steps, flickered past Ridge's defenses. The very notion of extending that child's existence, of giving him a chance to see Hope one more time, proved a lever strong enough to pry at Ridge's granite heart. He hesitated only for a breath, then at last consented. As the two men prepared for the donation, a fragile truce formed, cemented by blood and the shared understanding that, in this moment, old rivalries paled before the sanctity of a child's life. Back in Hope's arms, the news hit like a jagged shard of ice. For weeks, she had clung to rumors and half-truths. When Douglas vanished from the public eye, she had mourned his absence as though he were already lost. Yet Thomas's silence, his refusal to confirm the depth of Douglas's illness, had cut her deeper than any blade. Now, seeing Thomas return bloodied, figuratively and literally, Hope's steel-forged resilience cracked. The tears streamed freely as Thomas recounted every harrowing detail, the lab results showing hemoglobin levels plummeting to critical lows, the trembling of doctors' faces behind masks, the desperate phone call to Ridge. The tenuous hope that a successful donation might buy them precious hours. "He needs to see you," Thomas whispered, voice hoarse with emotion. "He needs his mother's smile. Please." In that moment, Hope's world narrowed to the sound of Douglas's name, the image of his small chest rising and falling under hospital sheets, and the singular, all-consuming fear that she might lose him forever. Every character in this unfolding drama feels the reverberations. Brooke, having weathered her own storms with Ridge and the Forresters, now finds herself torn between parental pride and steely support for her daughter-in-law. She hovers near Hope's side, offering comfort even as old anxieties, memories of previous losses, of fractured families resurface. Steffi, upon learning of her nephew's dire state, sets aside her rivalry with Thomas and barrels into action. Organizing an emergency vigil at her home, rallying friends and relatives to pray, to send love, to keep Douglas's spirit buoyed despite the frailty of his body. Even Finn, the ever-gentle physician, arrives to oversee transfusion protocols, his presence a balm to the raw nerves of Thomas and Hope. He stands sentinel by the infusion lines, monitoring vitals, offering words of quiet encouragement when Hope's sobs threaten to overwhelm her. Amid this collective urgency, the specter of the Spencer clan looms large. Liam, still reeling from Luna's fate and from the upheaval within his own marriage, grapples with guilt and helplessness. No longer the likely target of the writer's impending tragedy, he instead becomes an emotional anchor, sending messages of solidarity to Douglas through the silent spaces of a phone screen, promising that the Spencers stand united in hope. Bill Spencer, whose domineering instincts once clashed violently with the Forresters, momentarily sets aside corporate battles and power plays to join Brooke and Steffi in a chain of prayer. He even reaches out to Thomas, an olive branch that sparkles with both pragmatism and genuine concern, offering resources to secure any specialized treatment Douglas might need. In this extraordinary convergence of family lines, the old labels, Spencer versus Forrester, melt away under the intensity of one family's collective heartbreak. Beyond the hospital walls, fans debate which way the storyline will turn. Social media buzzes with speculation. Will Douglas survive? Is Thomas's sacrifice enough? Netflix and CBS fan forums fill with impassioned pleas for a miracle, for the radiance of Douglas's smile to once again light up screens. The writers, ever determined to keep viewers off balance, hint at a twist. If Douglas does slip away, it will not be with dramatic fanfare, but in the gentlest possible manner, one that honors the child's innocence and spares him needless suffering. Some speculate that his final moments will occur in Hope's embrace, that Thomas will watch with tears as his son drifts into peaceful sleep, that Ridge will stand guard, haunted forever by the blood he gave and the light he could not fully restore. Others hold on to the slimmest chance of a last-minute treatment breakthrough, an experimental therapy, permission for an international specialist to intervene, a new drug still under FDA review. But the undercurrent of all discussion remains the same. The emotional toll this storyline exacts is profound, raw, and unlike anything the bold and beautiful have wrought in recent memory. Through it all, one question haunts every scene. What does it mean to love when love cannot conquer death? Thomas's entire arc over the past weeks has led him to this crucible. He has atoned for past selfishness, braved public scorn, and confronted his deepest fears, all for Douglas. Hope's journey from blissful mother to frantic guardian, to a woman wrestling with grief even as she grasps at hope, illuminates a universal truth. Parenthood is the fiercest bond, the one that defines us, refines us, and sometimes, in cruel irony, crushes us under the weight of its stakes. Ridge, ever the stoic artisan, reveals a softer palette beneath his designer exterior, painting a portrait of compassion that belies his prickly reputation. And in the margins, characters like Brooke, Steffi, Liam, and Bill remind us that families, no matter how fragmented, can coalesce into a force more formidable than any single villain or vengeful plot. As the drama hurtles toward its climax, viewers brace themselves for an emotional reckoning. Will Douglas emerge as the miracle child, defying odds and eclipsing even the writer's reputation for unpredictability? Or will he slip away, leaving behind a tapestry of tears and memories embroidered with the love his parents poured into him? Whatever the outcome, one thing is certain. This latest twist transcends the everyday conflicts of fashion empires and romantic entanglements. It strikes at the heart of what it means to be human. To rally in the face of despair, to lay down old grievances for the sake of a child's breath, to embrace hope when the horizon is shrouded in darkness. In the days to come, as Ridge prepares to make his donation and the hospital readies its transfusion suite, Thomas and Hope cling to each other with a fierceness born of shared anguish. Their whispered promises fill the sterile air. I love you. Stay with me. Just one more sunrise. And all the while, the world outside waits with bated breath, wondering whether this boy, whose life has already been a tapestry of loss and longing, will finally find his way home. Bathed in the light of his mother's arms and the sacrificial gift of a father who refused to surrender. The bold and the beautiful have never summoned stakes so high, and never have viewers felt such a profound ache for a tiny life hanging in the balance. As the board is set, and the pieces move inexorably toward their final positions, we can only watch, hearts pounding, hoping against hope that Douglas will emerge victorious, if not untouched, then at least kissed by mercy before the curtain falls. It was a cruel revelation when the lab report arrived at Thomas's trembling hands. Ridge's blood, that rare gift Thomas had hoped would be the miracle, would only keep Douglas alive for a week. 1 week. An eternity for some, but unbearably brief for a child who had already known too much fear. In that single brutal line on the chart lay the hopes and heartbreaks of two parents, of a family torn between love and grief. Hope's eyes had gone wide with shock when Thomas shared the news in the sterile glow of the hospital hallway. She had always been the warrior mother, fierce and unwavering, pacing the polished floors and cradling Douglas through countless tests and transfusions. Together, she and Thomas had become actors in a tragic play, forcing smiles on their faces every time Douglas wandered into the room, asking for the usual bedtime stories, the silly songs, the hugs that once meant nothing more than comfort. They had turned his hospital room into a carnival of color, balloons, crayons, storybooks strewn across the foot of his bed, so he would forget the 4 lines snaking into his tiny arms and the monitors that beeped a steady reminder of his fading strength. Each morning, Hope would brush his soft hair back from his forehead and whisper, "You're my hero," as though by sheer force of will she could will the disease out of his blood. Thomas would hold her hand, forcing his jaw set, the pain in his eyes hidden behind a veil of determination. But at night, when the lights dimmed and Douglas slept, tears would glisten on Hope's cheeks and Thomas's breath would catch with silent sobs. They both understood that this week was a borrowed fragment of time, a final act in a story they were powerless to rewrite. And so they resolved to fill every moment with as much light as they could muster, to infuse Douglas's last days with laughter and warmth, even as their hearts broke in two with each forced giggle. Every hour became a precious gift. They summoned family members to the hospital room for impromptu gatherings. Ridge arrived quietly, bringing a stack of photo albums he and Douglas had filled together over the boy's short life. Pictures of tentative cake smears, summer picnics, Christmas mornings beneath glittering trees. Brooke sat by Hope's side, offering tissues and whispered prayers, her own memories of loss lending gravity to every tear. Steffi organized a bedside puppet show via video call for when in-person visits were limited, her fierce loyalty to her nephew shining brighter than any fashion runway. Liam sent voice messages full of fatherly love, his own grief over Luna mixing with compassion for Douglas's fight. Bill Spencer even arranged for a harpist to perform outside the hospital window. Dreams in Minor played softly against the antiseptic walls, an ethereal soundtrack to their vigil. Finn, stoic and professional by day, would slip in at night to check Douglas's vitals, and then stay after his shift, recounting silly anecdotes about scavenger hunts through the ER supply closets, anything to coax a smile. Through it all, Douglas's eyes would light up whenever his mother or father entered the room, and he would beam, "Mom, Dad, you're the best team ever," as though he sensed the gravity behind every embrace and wanted nothing more than to undo it with a few simple words. He asked about the blood transfusions only once, his small voice trembling, but when Hope answered, "It's Uncle Ridge's special magic," he nodded, satisfied, and returned to tracing the racing stripes painted on the hospital walls. For that week, they lived in a bubble of hope and heartbreak, brushing away tears before Douglas could see them, hiding the panic that knotted their stomachs even as the clock hammered closer to the dreaded deadline. And then, just as the dawn of the seventh day stretched its pale light across Douglas's room, the inevitable settled in. In the hush before morning rounds, with Hope's hand wrapped around his and Thomas's other hand pressed gently to his chest, Douglas slipped away. It was silent, almost peaceful, his chest stilled, the monitors fell silent, and he drifted into a stillness that carried him beyond pain. Hope felt her world fracture with a single shuddering breath. Thomas collapsed over the bed rail, tears